I'm playing something almost every week, and sometimes I want to talk about it and give you a vertical slice. So stick with me for some lightning reviews. This week on the chopping block. This week I've been playing Titanfall 2, another title that's been a semi-permanent fixture on my need-to-play backlog for the past several years. The original Titanfall, a now extinct game, was an interesting proof of concept back in the day of Call of Duty-style gunfighting broken up with occasional giant mechs getting dropped into battle to be piloted by players. It was a multiplayer-only game that tried to deliver a pre-written narrative, a foolhardy venture but a laudable attempt. Titanfall 2, by comparison, features a single-player campaign, and one reason Titanfall 2 was always something I wanted to get around to playing was its almost ubiquitous appearance on underappreciated games lists. I mean, hell, at the time of writing, I could go to my local GameStop and grab a copy for $2.99. Anyway, the only other relevant bits of knowledge I had going into Titanfall 2 was that it served as a foundation for the later game Apex Legends, which I put a couple dozen hours into prior, and that it was made by Respawn Entertainment, a studio comprised of former Infinity Ward developers after Activision went their usual path of being pulsating dick blisters on the game industry. Although I'm not sure EA is any better, but I digress. Starting the campaign, you play as Jack Cooper, a rifleman in the Frontier Militia, a space army fighting against a conglomerate intending on sucking planets dry for profit and disregarding any consequences for people or the world themselves called the Interstellar Manufacturing Corporation. In your first battle, your mentor and resident mech pilot gets mortally wounded and gives you the ability to pilot his war machine, BT-7274. One thing I noted when starting up was the controls. They are fantastic. Being former Call of Duty devs, it makes sense that they had shooting controls down to an art, and I was fortunately already familiar with them thanks to my time in Apex Legends. Standard movements and shooting are snappy and precise, but then we add enhanced traversal abilities like wall running to the mix. I occasionally struggled with them, but I more attributed that to the fact that I was mostly playing this game from my bed while I was laid low with COVID and using a controller. Then again, that was only while I was in standard foot soldier mode. Whenever I swapped to the mech piloting mode, movements were appropriately far more weighty and cumbersome, but delivers the power fantasy rather effectively when you can reduce normal enemies to clouds of red mist. The arsenal of options you could bring into mech fights was also visceral and impressive, especially since you can swap them in and out at any time. Whether I was in mech or on foot though, I never felt powerless. The tight movement and controls consistently ensured I was never without a tactical option, and any deaths I experienced were resolutely due to my own errors in judgment. Except for those walking spider mines. Those things. Level structure was also accentuated by the moving and shooting mechanics, with some sections being first-person platforming levels, while others focused strictly on combat, and one or two levels that I considered highlights of spectacle with how they incorporated the two. With pacing sometimes moving at an almost breakneck speed, I never felt bored during my playthrough. Now, one area I was genuinely surprised at in hindsight was the level of characterization the game presents. Early in the game, you snag an enemy radio to listen in on the big baddies you'll eventually be facing, but the more engrossing sides were your own interactions with BT. At moments throughout the story, you can choose how to interact with your mech AI, and I found these segments to provide a degree of levity with how I conducted myself. These actually got me invested in the latter half of the game once stakes began to rise on a personal level, which is why I was left so saddened at the end. Not only by the story itself, which in spite of the game's age I won't be spoiling because I'd like you to play this game if you haven't done so already, but by the brevity of the campaign. By the time the credits rolled, my playtime was sitting just short of 5 hours. I could have dove into multiplayer, but given the age of the game, I'd be extremely hesitant since anyone still playing is likely capable of casually crushing those cruising in out of curiosity. The fact that one of the first things I did upon completing the story was to Google word on a potential Titanfall 3 should be plenty of an endorsement of this game in spite of how old it is at this point. Also, referring back to the start of the video, you can grab a hard copy for PS4 or Xbox One for less than the cost of a gallon of milk. So what are you waiting for? Now, if you'll excuse me, this was the first in a series of game reviews that are working towards a larger project that'll hopefully be hitting in a few weeks. Hey, thanks for sticking around all the way to the end. Remember that I give away Steam keys with my regular weekly uploads, and all you have to do to enter is leave a comment and have contact info on your YouTube profile. But as always, thanks for watching and keep your head on your shoulders.